But,
Yeah.
yeah.
We run into sometimes is you know, our site plan review is for all non-residential and multifamily, whereas agriculture is almost like a third thing that's not mentioned. And, you know, some folks think, oh, well, you know, if he has a big farm, he should be, you know, coming to the planning board and talking about traffic and noise and hours of operation, but, you know, I don't think it really covers agriculture. I mean, and again, the farming part of it.
And in contrast, in Ackworth, we actually do run agricultural operations through site plan.
Yeah. And does your site plan review regulations mention that agriculture
Yeah,
needs to go through site
they
plan?
address agriculture.
It does.
There's certain minimum thresholds
Okay.
under which it doesn't apply.
And then the last section of this right to farm law, oh, I'm sorry,
Ms. Douglas, did you say that it was 674:32D?
no, I
Okay.
shouldn't have. A, B, and C.
Okay.
Are there
I
three?
I thought you used D, and I wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know what D
well,
becomes,
okay.
if there even is one.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
And then this last section says, and this is pretty explicit, the tilling of the soil and growing and harvesting of crops and horticultural commodities as a primary accessory use shall not be prohibited in any district. So it says to me, you can grow crops anywhere, any place, city, town, zoned or not.
So, Dick, is sludge and septage regulated by DES?
Yeah, NEDA. And I guess that's why that's mentioned in the very last section, because it says nothing in the subdivision shall be deemed to affect the regulation of sludge and septage. And there are other caveats in here in Roman 3. It says no matter what this, in layman's terms, what all this statute says, it doesn't mean that the farm or the place of animal production can't be found to be a public health or safety hazard if it is, or that it's immune from the laws of the Department of Environmental Services, wetlands permits and that type of thing, although there are some special provisions within wetlands permits for minimum impact projects, but it's pretty clear that while agriculture is encouraged to be treated differently, it's not off the hook entirely. And it leaves much of the detail to referencing BMPs, some of which, and there are any number of BMPs, some of them are published by UNH Cooperative Extension, some by USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, and some by us. The ones I deal with are limited to manure and agricultural nutrients. And then the NL Pesticide Division, of course, has something similar. That's pretty much what all these laws that are referencing state and federal laws are saying, and just making clear that you still have to do a number of other things. Then there's the other whole realm is food production or food processing. And our department has relatively little to do with food processing. Some states, most states, the Department of Agriculture is charged with food inspection, processing of food, slaughtering of livestock, meat inspection. We have no meat inspection program in our department or in the state. And food processing is not in the Department of Agriculture, but it's housed at the Department of Health and Human Services and under the Division of Food Protection. So if someone is making a processed food, I think they've defined that. You know what is not covered is raw agricultural commodities, fresh fruits and vegetables, herbs, flowers, eggs, maple syrup. But anything else, salsas and jams and jellies and breads, that needs a license from either the state or the 12 or 15 self-inspecting communities that do that work themselves. I don't know about Lebanon, probably is, anybody know, self-inspecting? Yeah, but.
Dick, who houses the Homestead Act?
Yeah, and that's under Division of Food Protection.
It is under
Homestead, and they, in the last few years, they've come up with a simplified licensing system for, you know, there's great interest in specialty food products produced in, essentially in a home kitchen. And what I understand is any ordinary home kitchen, as long as you get hot water, with, and, you know, some sink and basic things on civilization, you will pass. So it's not hard to get. You do have to pay a fee, and you might have to have the product tested. So that's something to fear. The other statutes I wanted to review are in our purview under the Title 40, which is the agricultural statutes. And this one is, it's titled Nuisance Liability of Agricultural Operations, 43232, 4132. And it defines an agricultural operation, again, referencing it back to RSA 2134A. And then in the next section, 43233, it says that no agricultural operation shall be found a public or private nuisance as a result of changed conditions in or around the locality of the agricultural operation, if such operation has been in operation for 1 year or more, and it was not a nuisance at the time it began operation. Again, it doesn't, this exemption, this immunity doesn't apply if there's a serious, imminent public health or safety threat. And in simple terms, what this means is a farm can't be sued for doing what they were doing before, if they hadn't been found a nuisance before, when the conditions change around the farm, and that means, say, a commercial development went in, or a condominium, or another house even. So it's sort of, and you often hear people talk about, well, aren't I grandfathered? You know, people have this idea that because you've been doing something, you can do it forever. Not quite the case, but this is kind of a grandfathering clause that does say just because everything changes, and if your community zones this area where there were existing farms and changes the whole nature of the population, well, it's too bad. They should have known, you should have known. That's been around since 1985. A couple more limitations to that, too. And then the last statute is the one that I already touched on, that directs us to respond to complaints and to publish BMPs. And what I wanted to just point out, I've got several things. We've got some hard copies of this manual, the most recent one we've done. Originally, it was envisioned that we would be dealing with complaints about dairy farms and poultry farms and pig farms. And in reality, though, I've been doing this for 15 years, responding to complaints, and we've done hundreds of them. And 90+% of them have been horse farms or small backyard kind of menageries, the kind of thing I think some of the towns are puzzling over how to deal with. So because of that, we've done some additions to this manual in the last couple of years, and we did a special set of best management practice for equine facilities. Because horse facilities are really very different than a dairy farm for just simple reasons. They don't grow crops typically. They don't have equipment. Yet the horses are producing as much manure as a cow. It's drier, but you know, it's still manure. 10, 12 tons a year, and it needs to go somewhere. They typically don't have storages. We've seen so many, maybe not so much in this part of the state, but in the southeastern tier, large commercial equine facilities, indoor riding arenas, and towns go ahead and permit them, and nobody seems to think about the manure until afterwards. And often these are on pretty challenging pieces of land, and we tend to see we come in too late. So I would encourage towns to, if you're going to permit, and I guess normally you'd have to get a permit for a large indoor riding arena or stable, that you ask them to consider and plan for manure storage and removal. And one plug I also like to make, and one void that we see, is because so often when we go out to these horse farms and there's a mountain of manure that's been there for 3 years, it's really pretty simple. We tell them, well, that's not a best management practice to let it sit. We think of it as, it's